Here's inspiring philosophy, not understanding what words mean.
Maybe, just maybe, we will finally get a definition on what atheists mean by extraordinary. Well, if it's simple, then it should be simple for you to define what that term means. Calm down, buddy. All I'm asking for is a simple definition. You need to define your terms. We still have not got a definition on what an extraordinary claim is or what would qualify as extraordinary evidence. Detailed definition. We still never got a definition of what extraordinary is.
Is it just me, or has being on TikTok made him angrier? I mean, what am I looking at here? It's like he's trying to copy the aggressive delivery of David Wood, but just ends up looking constipated. And if I've offended any Michael Jones fans watching, relax, I'm just messing around. I'm sure that based on how obnoxious he acts sometimes that he can take a joke. But on to more substantive critiques, of which I have two. The first is that an obsessive focus on necessary and sufficient conditions for what words mean is often just a smokescreen.
Do you believe in God? And I think, okay, there's a couple of mysteries in that question. What do you mean do? What do you mean you? What do you mean believe? And what do you mean God? And you say as the questioner, well, we already know what all those things mean. We don't really know what any of those things mean.
Words. What do they mean? Look, I get that definitions can be more or less important depending on the context, but you do actually have a sense of what extraordinary means, Michael. Because you didn't learn how to use it by reading a dictionary. You developed a cluster of concepts associated with it by observing how other people use the term. Further, I think the sentiment behind extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence is very intuitive.
How explicit they are and just how wild they are. Some of these claims are really wild, and you would expect... Well, what I'm thinking of is that these claims are so specific and so detailed, some of them, that you would need some really good evidence in order to affirm that.
But showing that something is intuitive doesn't answer the demand for a definition of extraordinary, does it? Here's a crack at it.
The right way to interpret the first part of this claim is an extraordinary claim. I think that really just means a claim that has a really low prior probability. Then you need some good evidence in order to overcome or outweigh that initial improbability that you've got in the prior there. And so you've got to have some really good evidence to overcome it.
Something similar to this is likely what most people mean, and it seems pretty obvious and basic. As philosopher Michael Huemer puts it, quote, the more probable the theory starts out, the more probable it ends up. Sort of like how the easiest way to become a millionaire is to start out with $999,999. This also supports the slogan, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, which basically means that if you have a hypothesis that is super implausible to begin with, then you're going to need a lot of evidence before it becomes believable. Whereas, if you started out with a plausible hypothesis, then you don't need as much evidence, unquote. So there. That was easy. An extraordinary claim is a claim that has a very low prior probability, where prior probability is just how likely something is before looking at the evidence. So can we stop with this now? The real debate should be about whether the prior probability of a guy coming back to life and floating into the sky is low, not over whether extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence is true. As for the prior probability of miracles, we have very well-established generalizations about how nature operates, and if those accord with your experience of every second of your life, then it's completely reasonable to view the prior probability of the resurrection as low. Additionally, adding God to the equation doesn't raise the prior that much. As philosopher Cavin said in his debate with Licona, quote, if God wills that I turn into a gigantic green cucumber, then indeed I will turn into a gigantic green cucumber. But it's very unlikely that God would will such a thing. The problem here is the fact that God can superintervene doesn't mean it's likely that he will. God's self-revelation through nature shows that he has an exceptionally strong tendency not to interfere supernaturally in the course of nature. We can see more specifically that God reveals every day in our everyday experience and in science that he possesses an exceptionally strong tendency not to supernaturally raise dead people from the dead, unquote. So hopefully that clarifies some things. But as it happens, God doesn't exist anyway. Tap on this video next to me to see a powerful argument against God.